Sky. Quinn. And River. Don't be afraid to say their names. They are your babies. They always will be your babies. And we need to break the stigma and shout their names as if they were here on earth with us. Let's never forget them. Hi, I'm Charlie.
And I'm Sophie.
And we have been married. Well, it's going to be 6 years in November. But we've been together 8 years in November.
Yes.
So let's go back to where it all began. And that was not with our girls barking. Dixie.
That's inappropriate timing. It's okay, princess. It's alright.
Good girl. So it started with both of us signing up online. To start off with, just to find some friends, make some connections, and just to get to know people, because we're both quite introverted people.
Yeah.
And don't have any friends.
No, not at all. And I, at the time, was unsure about my sexuality as well. So I'd just tried dating.
You've got a friend.
We do. Dating like some guys, and it just wasn't working out. And I just got a bit fed up, and my self-confidence was really low. So I just decided that I wanted to sign up. You're okay with it? Sign up to meet women that I could maybe be friends with, like Charlie said, because I didn't know that many people. So I thought it would be a good idea.
And for me, I went from being this healthy person that was going to university to train to be a paramedic to being mega sick, losing my job, and having to move 50 miles from where I was living. So obviously I signed up just to try and make some friends. And I had a message in my inbox.
I remember seeing the photos on her profile, and there was one where she had different colours on all of her fingernails, and she's just pulling like the most ridiculous face, and I just looked at it and I was just like, she looks like she'd be fun to be friends with. Rest your face, princess. Can you lie down?
Where are you going?
I want to go here, Mama.
Okay.
She looked like she'd be fun to be friends with, so I figured, why not send her a message? And well,
I took 10 days to reply.
10 days. So by this point, I was just like, clearly she doesn't want to talk to me. That's fine, it happens.
Just one of those things. But once I did message, it is literally like we had known each other for years. Talking every day. It went from talking on the dating website to talking, was it Skype?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And we ended up swapping numbers, so we would text every day, and then we would be Skyping in the evening.
We ended up, quite quickly, basically going less than 2 hours without talking to each other unless we were asleep.
Yeah.
So, although we were 100 miles apart, we were basically with each other all the time, kind of thing.
It then came up to the time where it was coming up to Soph's birthday, and I asked her what she wanted for a present, because we had been talking by that point for 3 months. And she said she wanted to meet me. So
she'd already asked me to be her girlfriend by that point.
yeah.
And I said yes, but we kind of had it sort of accepted that if we were to meet in person and we didn't click like in reality, because sometimes that does happen, that we would be okay with it and we would just continue to be friends instead.
Yeah. So we arranged to meet halfway between the two of us. Although I was on my own, Soph decided to bring half her family with her.
In my defence, you could drive, I couldn't. And so my mum and dad were driving, but they didn't know where they were going. So my uncle came along because he knew the area really well.
I ended up getting lost. Well, at least that was a good icebreaker for when we first met up.
It was great. It was around Christmas time, obviously, because it was in November. And at one point, Charlie was like, "I'm by the big Christmas tree," and we were
Little
just
did
like,
we know there was multiple big Christmas
there
trees.
were lots of big Christmas trees.
But yeah, we clicked straight away.
We did.
And then following on from that point, every Friday I would drive down to Soph, pick her up from work, then we would spend the weekend together, and then on the Monday we would spend some time together in the morning. She would have to go work in the afternoon, and then we would pick up a Chinese for us and her mum and dad, because Soph was still living at home at that point. And then I would set off home again at midnight on that Monday night. And
Which was hard.
Yeah.
Every time.
And we were doing that every weekend. And it kind of... It was hard. And it was exhausting driving backwards and forwards, but obviously it was worth it. And I think we did that for a year. And then I moved in 2013, in the September. And we stayed living with Soph's parents for another year. We ended up getting our first dog, Dixie. Yes, you. But in that time we also spoke about how we wanted to have a family. And we were just desperate to kind of get started right away, because it was something we both really wanted. So we spoke to our friends who was currently pregnant. They were in a same-sex relationship as well, and they gave us a lot of advice, do's and don'ts and whatever. And then we signed up to this one website, and we decided we didn't want, because we were going to be doing home inseminations. We wasn't going to be going to a clinic. So we wanted to find a donor that wasn't close to where we lived, because we didn't want it to be we were walking around town and we would see our donor, and obviously we would have our family. So we found a donor who was probably about 150 miles away. And every time it was coming up to our cycle, we would arrange to meet up at a hotel. We would be there for like the weekend. We'd spend some time there, do the insemination, and then we'd go home the next day.
None of our family knew about this service.
No, we wanted it to be that we would not tell anybody, and when we were pregnant we wanted to surprise everybody, and we wanted to do this big reveal, and that is how we wanted to do it for years. With this particular donor, we didn't conceive, and it was getting to the point it was getting really costly.
Yeah.
So we just decided to take a break. That didn't stop us, however. Every time we were going to a charity shop looking at the baby clothes, and if something was cute there, we would buy it.
Couldn't help ourselves.
No, because
can't help ourselves.
in our minds, we thought it was going to happen really quickly. You always hear of people getting pregnant like by mistake, or they.
And even like the friends that gave us lots of advice, they got pregnant quite quickly.
I think it was on their third try, but it was still quickly. I mean, by that point we had 5-6 tries, and it was just not happening. and then we decided to take a bit of a break because we ended up moving out, and then in 2014, like same-sex gay marriage, LGBT marriage, all the above, became legal. So we decided that year, because we had already been in, like, we proposed to each other in 2013, and in 2014 we decided that we wanted to get married. Girls, can you yes. And it was after then that we were just like, I think we're ready to give it another go. We did find one donor, and we did things a little bit differently then, but it just didn't work out. And the home that we were in, we were actually in temporary accommodation. So when we moved into our actual official first home together, we decided to give it another go.
Yeah.
This time we had it where the donor came to us, so came to our home, and we just done things then. Again, though, it took a good few months, and then I think it was about end of September, beginning of October, we fell pregnant. At this point, Soph was going to be the carrier, and all was going well. Was already getting like pregnancy symptoms, obviously positive tests. We hadn't been to the doctors yet because it was still like really early, and it got to about the middle of November, and Soph started getting really poorly, and she started bleeding. And,
a lot.
Yeah, and literally within a few hours, the bleeding was getting really bad. Was having really bad cramping, back pains, and things like that. So we made an appointment with the doctor, and it turned out that we had our first miscarriage. At that point, we still decided we didn't want to tell anybody. We kept it to ourselves because we didn't want it to be like, oh, by the way, we had a miscarriage and we were pregnant.
Yeah, we were pregnant, but we're not anymore.
Yeah, it didn't sit right. And we kind of just tried to put it to the back of our heads. We didn't know anybody who had lost a baby beforehand.
And like to some degree, we also like we know now that it wasn't the right sort of way of looking at it, but at the time we were like, well, it was really early, it was before the first scan, so maybe we shouldn't worry about it, maybe we shouldn't like think about it, or
it was only the beginning of the pregnancy. I think we worked out that Soph was like 6, possibly 7 weeks, so like in our minds we just didn't think people would think that as actually they weren't really pregnant because they hadn't had a scan, they didn't know the gender, they hadn't heard a heartbeat, all things like that. So we just kept it to ourselves. And then obviously that took a toll on both of us, and
emotionally and physically. I mean, physically it
you ended up needing to go on anemia tablets because the bleeding was just so bad.
Exactly. It sort of ended up like not stopping, didn't it?
Yeah.
For months.
Years.
Well, yeah, for years. And like we still don't know what it sort of triggered to go wrong.
No.
With my system, but even to this day, things still aren't right from that, and that was several years ago now.
Yeah. And then in 2015, we decided that we were going to be taking a break, and we decided to have Dixie get pregnant, and that was an amazing experience.
It was.
She would let us play with the pups when they were in her tummy, and and then she had 7 pups, and obviously then we were looking after them, and that passed a lot of time very quickly. And that's when we got this little girly Alba.
If you can even see her, I'm not sure. Like,
here's an
the
ear.
height of the yeah, they probably see the ear.
Yeah. So obviously having puppies, it filled up our time.
And to some degree, it gave us that motherly sort of feeling, and because obviously we were doing everything for the puppies.
Yeah.
And for Dixie, obviously. So.
Yeah. It was a great distraction and a great result. But by the time it was 2015, we decided we want to try again. And this time we thought we would try with me because Soph's system hadn't sorted itself out enough yet. So like each month we were testing ovulation again. We were trying to see like the patterns of when ovulation was at its highest, and we needed to find a new donor. It's actually really hard to find a donor that doesn't want to co-parent,
and is happy to do AI as well.
Yeah, because a lot of donors, they're not happy just doing AI, which when you're in a same-sex relationship, you're generally like for like 2 females, generally having sex with a male, it's not what you like. So,
and even if like I'm pansexual, so I love a person for who they are, not generally like their gender, but I'm in love with Charlie.
Yeah, we're married.
Not anyone else. So,
and in our minds, it just seemed so wrong to be sleeping with somebody else.
Yeah, regardless of like the possible outcome.
It just didn't work well in our minds. It took a good few months again, and we ended up getting pregnant for the second time. And like before, everything was going well for the first few weeks, and it got to about the 5th week, and I suddenly had this horrendous back pain and tummy pain and cramping. It was just awful.
And we knew at that point.
Yeah, bleeding was really bad. And like generally with my periods and things like that, I don't get pain, I don't get cramping, I don't get anything. So for me, it was completely out of the ordinary. Like it was just something I just never experienced. Not just for the miscarriage kind of thing, but like the cramping and stuff as well. And I remember going to the toilet at one time, and there was like light spotting and things like that, but we had read that can happen, and that it could be just like the uterus like getting used to an embryo starting to grow.
I mean, I think deep down we sort of knew.
Yeah.
But obviously,
we still had hope.
Yeah, you do have to try and cling on to hope, because otherwise, you just... It's just hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to accept things like this.
A few days later again, I went to the toilet again, and the bleeding was really bad, and it wasn't just like TMI, but it wasn't just like blood. There was like a massive, what looked like a massive clot kind of thing. And we figured that was obviously the baby that was starting to grow. Initially, we kept it to ourselves again. We thought, well, we managed to keep it to ourselves the first time. We could do it again, and we still wanted to give that surprise to our family of being pregnant. And then the same situation came up of, oh well, we were pregnant, but we've now lost the baby again.
Yeah, because our families, especially my family, because we visit my family a lot, and I speak to my mum and dad every single day. So they all knew how much we wanted a family, and it sort of like got to the point that like they were really excited about us wanting a family as well.
We started when we fell pregnant with Soph, carrying, we started collecting a few more baby items.
And they knew about that. They knew that
both of our families knew that we were already getting a nursery sorted, even though they didn't know we were trying to conceive at that time. And it got to about 2-3 weeks after we lost the second baby, and we both just sat there and was just like, we can't do this on our own. We need the support. We need our families. And at that point, neither of us were really good at talking about our emotions and how we felt. So the way that we did it is we wrote a letter, and we wrote a letter to like our immediate family, so our grandparents, parents, and our siblings. No stretching. And it was at that point when we were just reading up on things and checking, like just seeing what other people had done. We had found that regardless of how many whatever gestation you were pregnant when you lost the babies, that people found comfort in naming their baby. So at that point we decided that the first baby that we had lost, we decided to call them Sky. Obviously we didn't know the genders, and we wanted to find a gender neutral name.
With that being said, we have come to like the decision of like the feeling that we think we have more of a feeling that they were like a specific gender. Obviously we don't know because it was too early, but we just found ourselves
saying, and every time we mentioned our first baby, we had this feeling that they were going to be a girl.
Where's your face, princess?
And then obviously we decided to name the second baby as well. Girls, lie down, please. And we decided to name them River. It was kind of like with them being elements of like the world and earthly things, like it was like they were with us all the time with these names.
And they just seemed to fit as well. Like they just felt right.
Yeah.
And
girls, lie down.
Lie down, princess, or you'll have to get off. And like when we later made frames in honor of them, we got Scrabble letters, and we found out that like the numbers on the Scrabble letters for each of their names added up to really important dates for us.
Yeah.
So it was just really weird how perfect and right everything was.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
And with River, whenever we were talking about them, it just seemed to us like they would have been a boy.
Yeah.
Which the feelings of knowing that in our minds that we thought that he would be a boy, it was the same as when we thought Sky was going to be a girl. It was it was the same feelings, but for a different assigned sex at birth, like result. And it was actually comforting being able to have a name and to be able to refer to them and actually be able to talk to our family as well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just between us. And then obviously once we decided that everyone had received our letters, we said on social media.
We'd said in our letters that we didn't want everybody to come on like and speak to us and be like, oh my god, we're so sorry or whatever. We didn't want it to be made into a massive deal.
No.
But we just knew that it was time that we had to tell people, and we just wanted their support, and just wanted everybody to know that these things had happened, because we knew that they are big parts of our lives.
Yeah. Obviously, once we had then announced it on social media, we had a few friends come to us saying that they too had lost babies. I made eye contact.
You did.
Right down.
When you go to the garden.
Go to the garden. Go to the garden.
Garden.
I know what she wants.
Oh, so that time is it?
Yeah.
Because we knew that they were a really important part of our lives, so obviously we wanted people to know, and we wanted to basically sort of celebrate that they are a part of our family, and not just trying to push it out of our minds and stuff, and to be the only two people that knew about it.
Like, for me, I didn't want people to think that we felt ashamed that we had these pregnancies and we just didn't talk about them. Like, they had a heartbeat. They existed. And we had every right to be able to talk about them.
Exactly. I mean, as we said earlier, there were certain, like, there are still times now, sometimes, that I just think, just some people look at us and think, well, you hadn't even had a first scan yet. It's ridiculous. Like, and especially from an experience that I had in the past working in a salon, where the people I was working with had actually said something very similar to that about this lady who was having a memorial done for her pregnancy loss, and they had been quite nasty about it, and
That kind of thing stays with you.
Yeah, it really did, because like even at the time I was mortified, and if I don't feel confident to sort of speak up to somebody about something, I'll just go silent, and I literally just went silent, because it's not, they have no right to be so horrible about something like that about somebody. And like at the time I was just thinking, that's not your baby, that's her baby, and she's lost that baby. She has a right to grieve over that baby. But then obviously when it happened to us, what they'd said still played in my mind.
Yeah. Well, that was adorable.
I want to be in it too.
So yeah, like obviously we had a few months where we then didn't even think about trying to conceive again. We needed to take another break.
Yeah, it was a good few months, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then it got to around the March in 2018 that we decided that we were ready to try again. Soph's cycle still hadn't sorted itself out following losing Sky. My cycle had sort of like was kind of back to normal again, and doing the ovulation tests and things like that, it was all lining up. So obviously we had to go find a donor again, because there were so many length of time in between. A lot of donors, they only work with one family at a time, so that's why we had to find somebody new again. And just like before, it took a few months, a few tries until we fell pregnant for the third time. And it was about 5-6 weeks again. And we had a third miscarriage. By that point, because we had announced on social media that we were going to be trying again, and we have been like openly talking more about the previous losses and about how much we want to be parents, and trying to conceive again, because we did go through like a phase in our life that we were trying to adopt. We went to the initial meetings, and we had our first home meeting, and they basically said that they wouldn't allow us to adopt because I was in a wheelchair.
Well, they said that, but they also said that we were too supportive of our support system.
I mean, we talk about that on our vlog on YouTube, so hopefully the link will be somewhere for you to be able to go access that if you're in a position where you
would be interested in doing that.
Yeah, or like if you have got any illnesses, or if family members of yours are ill and you're just unsure, we kind of talk a lot about that on that vlog. So once we did lose our third baby, for the first few days, we were both kind of, we didn't want to acknowledge it. We didn't want to acknowledge the fact that for the third time, our pregnancy resulted in loss. And I think it was like day 3 that we decided we need to sit down, and we needed to talk together, because at the moment we were just in our own little thought bubbles. So yeah, we sat down, we spoke, and we decided that we wanted to give our third baby a name. And weirdly enough, I was sat on the sofa downstairs, Sophie was on the toilet, and all of a sudden we both messaged each other
at the exact same time.
As Soph's came through to me and mine came through to Soph. We both turned and said Quinn.
It was really weird.
Yeah, it just, the fact that we'd never spoke about that name, we'd never talked about it before, and then for us both to say it at the exact same time from 2 different areas of the house, we knew that it was just meant to be. And then we looked at the Scrabble letters again, and the Scrabble letters again, the numbers on them matched up to an important time of our lives together, and that kind of just confirmed to us that that was supposed to be their name.
And we feel that Quinn was a girl.
Yeah, that's, whenever we talk of Quinn, it always seems to be that we refer to her as a her. We can't explain that feeling. It's just like the feeling that we get from inside, that we know, or we believe these were what our babies would have been. We have been able to speak a bit more about the losses since we announced on social media and things, and spoke on our vlog about losing Quinn. When we did the vlog, having to talk it through, it helped even more, because yes, Sophie and I were talking to each other because there's only us in the room and then there's a camera, like we're talking now, but we're still talking and it's still getting things out. So although your sole purpose wasn't really to talk to each other, that's kind of how it ended up, and it just helped kind of ease and the worries of wondering what each of us were feeling, and knowing where we both were with the grieving process. And even now, it'll be 5 years in November with Sky. That grief is still very much there. It doesn't go away. People turn around and say that time heals, but for us, in our opinion, time doesn't heal. It just allows you to break it down and
Get used to it.
yeah. It never takes the pain away, because all you think about, like, next year technically Sky would have been going to school, so when everybody's going to be posting their pictures of their children's first ever day in school, we're not going to have that moment. And it's all these different milestones of when things are supposed to happen. It reminds you of what you don't have.
Yeah.
And for us, it's what we don't have 3 times over. And that is hard, especially like when we do finally have a successful pregnancy. That pain is not going to take it away, but with having a successful pregnancy, we will have that baby to be able to do these milestones with. And it's just, I think that would help. And children always make things better anyway because of who they are. But no matter how many years go by, that pain and that grief is still going to be there. Even when we sort through items recently, there was an item that we bought when we first started trying to conceive with Sky, and it was the very first outfit that we ever bought. And just holding that outfit, because we've kept it, like, it brings back all the memories. Like, it all just comes flooding back for where we bought it, why we bought it, and it has these like tangible meanings to them.
It's really hard.
Yeah. One thing recently that we have found to be quite helpful, other than talking and vlogging and like posting on social media and things like that, is we've invested in a reborn baby. We did a lot of research, and a lot of people turn and say that following on from losing their babies, having the opportunity to hold a very lifelike resemblance that is weighted, that is the size of an actual baby, being able to use the items that you might have bought for your baby, and things like that, it can help with your grief and just trying to get through each day. And admittedly, with this reborn baby that we've got, it has been really helpful.
Yeah.
I
mean, there are still moments that, like, we're changing her and we just think, you know, this could have been a real baby by now.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it is still comforting to be able to go through those kinds of routines.
Yeah. So this is our reborn baby. And literally, because of the way that they are made, like, it is lifelike. It's got all the details. The hair is rooted in. The head literally flops like it would with a newborn, so you have to support their head. You can have it so that they've got like tummy plates and things that are all realistic. You can have it so it's just a cloth tummy, so it's more, they say it's like more of a cuddle factor.
Which we have to agree with.
Yeah. And just being able to hold her, like when we're feeling down or we're missing that opportunity of being able to hold a baby, we can just go and get her, and there's not been a day gone by where we've not interacted with her and we've not dressed her, accessorized her, changed nappies, anything like that. Like I said, we we can now start using the stuff that we've bought over the years, whereas before it was just in a room. And we couldn't bring ourselves to get rid of it because we bought it for these babies that we conceived, and just getting rid of it was just not an option. We just couldn't bring ourselves to do it. So having her finally allows us to be able to use some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of this video, you saw 3 frames that had the initial of each of our babies, and like I said, the names in Scrabble letters. We actually made them ourselves, and it's surprising how much it helped putting these little frames together.
Yeah.
Because parents tend to put like shadow boxes of your baby, of like their wristband and their first hat and outfit and stuff like that, and put their weight and whatever else. Obviously we didn't have that. I mean, we didn't even have a scan, so we had nothing to resemble that pregnancy.
Yeah, so and we're very visual people as well. Like, we have so many pictures of like our dogs and everything up, and we had nothing that we could see every day to do with our babies. So we decided to do the shadow boxes.
The other helpful thing that I found with the shadow boxes is we have them in our living room, and when we have people come in who might not have been here before, they ask about them, and in that we talk about our babies. It gives a talking point to be able to bring them up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time people assume that we don't have children, when we do. We have 3.
Yeah.
They just happen to be in heaven.
Yeah.
So some people don't acknowledge the fact that we call ourselves mums, but in our minds we still are.
Yeah.
And if you've gone through this and you have had a loss, but you don't have nothing to show off, so to speak, at the end of it, that doesn't mean that you're any less of a parent. It doesn't mean that you're any less of a mum or a dad. You're still very much that person who helped to conceive that child, and that child still did exist. So just don't let anybody tell you otherwise, that you're not a parent, when you are. Your child's not here on earth.
I think just that there is like something that we are still trying to sort of learn and to process, and to tell ourselves that there is nothing to be ashamed of by losing a pregnancy or a baby or anything.
It's not your fault.
No, exactly. There's nothing that we did, and there's nothing that you did if you've lost that caused that to happen. Sometimes they just happen. It happens.
It sucks. It really does royally suck.
And it's heartbreaking.
But you can't change that. You can't bring it back. You can't prevent it. And it is just a case that you've got to live with it. But live with it knowing that you're not alone. We found that there isn't a lot of support out there specific for LGBT people. So not saying that straight people, whatever else, don't struggle with whatever, but obviously like LGBT people, they've got the struggle of coming out. They've got to be brave enough to try and confront your families, to try and say who you really are. And then obviously if you then lose a baby as well, that's everything on top of the mental struggles that you've been through already with trying to identify with who you are. So it for us, we find it is different to
Yeah.
a straight couple having lost a child.
And I know, obviously, we know that many straight couples do have problems conceiving, but with gay couples, there are other things that you have to think about, and there are a lot of other things that you can't just do it on your own. You need a lot of people's support and input generally to actually even be able to conceive. So
I mean, for us, we are big people, so we don't qualify for infertility treatment. So we have to do it on our own in the community, which it can be difficult when we don't have sperm on tap. We can't be at the peak of our cycle and then be like, okay, let's try and make a baby now. Like, it's that time we need to go. Or we can't bring up the fertility clinic and be, okay, it's triggered today, it's our high peak, let's do an insemination. We have to try and find somebody willing to do that outside of the realms of the NHS or private clinics, and that security of knowing that we could in 10 years time turn and say, look, it's your child, we want money. There is that worry aspect for a lot of donors out there that yes, they might be helping us, but there's nothing to say that we wouldn't, like, we personally wouldn't do this, but others might say 10 years down the line, well, they're your child as well, you need to start looking after them. And it has happened to a lot of donors. So they do get quite worried when you ask them for help, and depending on the area of where you live, it's not that easy to then try and conceive again.
No. Like, we live in the southwest of the UK, and there's such a little amount of people who are actually willing to help that it's so difficult finding someone.
We also found as well that when we have been looking for a donor, obviously we say that we have had 3 losses, and that can put people off as well wanting to help, because it is a lot of effort for them. They have to be in the mindset to want to help, and obviously if they're going to think that they're going to help and nothing's going to come out of it, or we're just going to lose another baby, then obviously that is going to affect them as well. So we have to be honest about it, but at the same time it does put off a lot of people when all we want to do is we want to try again, and we want to be able to have a viable pregnancy, and it isn't that easy.
No.
But you need to know that you're not alone, and if you don't think you can talk to your family, there are support groups on Facebook. They're not well known, but there is quite a few LGBT plus baby groups on Facebook. I'll find some of the names and I'll put it in at the end of our video, so that like you can find them, if like search for them and see if you can be added, see if you can get that support as well, because there's nothing worse than not having that support, which we know now following losing Quinn that it is better to talk about it.
Definitely.
And not to bottle it up, because it will just eat away at you.
And obviously, as we mentioned earlier, we do have a YouTube channel, so if you want to sort of get in touch with us for support, because we love helping and supporting other people who are in similar situations to us.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can come and talk to us through our vlog. We've been more than happy with that, wouldn't we? So
yeah, definitely.
yes. Okay, so it says here, most miscarriages occur at the start of pregnancy, the overall probability of a pregnancy ending in miscarriage in the UK is 25% at 4 weeks, 5% at 8 weeks, 1.7% at 12 weeks, and 0.5% at 16 weeks. More than 80% of miscarriages occur within the first 12 weeks of pregnancy.
So just that alone shows, like, 25% for the whole population for those first few weeks is huge. And I'm pretty sure that somebody else, even on your street, has lost a baby.
We actually, since coming out and speaking and letting people know about it, we've actually discovered a lot of people, friends and family, who have lost pregnancies, who we had no idea about before because they were ashamed or didn't feel like they could talk about it. But with us speaking about it, they've been able to have the support from us as well.
Yeah.
So you will be surprised, unfortunately, how many people will understand.
Yep. And the last thing is, one other place that we've got massive support from is a non-profit on Facebook called Our Angel Bears. They literally have been amazing.
Yeah.
They've helped give little things for the frames for our babies. They talk to us regularly, like we can talk to them. They celebrate anniversaries with you. Literally, they're just absolutely fantastic. I think we would be lost if we hadn't have found them. They've just been a fantastic support network.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our story, I would say, in a nutshell, but it's not a nutshell because it's quite long.
Yes.
So if you've made it this far, thank you very much for listening. We do really appreciate it. It is hard to talk about, even all these years past, but like we said, talking about it is good. So yeah, we'll hopefully have the link for you to come talk to us on our vlog if that's what you want to do.